Hi everyone. Today's learning target is I can write an effective concluding paragraph for my 5-paragraph essay. This is it, guys. We're coming to the end. So we're going to talk about what a concluding paragraph is, why it's important, and how we can write one. A conclusion reminds your reader of the main points of your paper. It summarizes what you want the reader to get out of your essay, and it gives the reader a sense of closure. This is your last chance to really drive home the main point of what you've written about. If you remember, we talked about introductions and conclusions at the beginning of this unit. They're so important. They bring everything together. So you've written your introduction, now it's time to write kind of the mirror of the introduction, the conclusion. You do 3 things when you're writing your concluding paragraph. First, you're going to restate your thesis. You're going to remind the reader what your thesis was at the beginning, but you're going to say it in a different way. Next, you're going to summarize just the main points. You're going to wrap everything together that you covered in your first, second, and third body paragraph. And then you're going to end by just answering the question, so what? And I'll explain that in a few slides. So let's look at an example of this list in action. You remember we had used this cheerleading paper as an example, and this was my thesis back when we covered how to write a thesis. My thesis was cheerleading should be considered a sport because it requires athletic skills, physical training, and promotes team competition. I want to remind my reader that that was the point of everything that they've read. So I'm going to say it again in my conclusion, but I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Now I've taken my thesis and I've changed it to this. Extreme feats of athletic ability, intense training, and a healthy dose of competition are the key ingredients to any serious sport. Thus, we can see that cheerleading clearly qualifies. And if you look, I have underlined my main thesis and then my 3 reasons. Cheerleading should be considered a sport. In the conclusion, I said cheerleading clearly qualifies as a sport. I touched on athletic skills. I talked about athletic ability, but it's the same thing. Physical training, I had intense training. And team competition, I had competition. So I covered the same 3 topics that I covered in my body paragraph. I restated it in this thesis in a new way. I kind of did it backwards. If you notice, I wrote like my main answer at the very end. You don't have to do it that way, but that's just one way to kind of switch things up a little bit. So after you've restated your thesis, you're going to summarize your main points. To do this, you have to go back and read your first, second, and third body paragraphs and think about if you had to wrap up that entire section in just 1 or 2 sentences, what would you say? Now, when I wrote mine, I made sure that, and I just kept in mind the 3 topics of my body paragraphs. My first one was athletic skills, then physical training, then team competition. So I made sure to kind of cover those things within this. So this comes right after I restate my thesis. The next thing I do is summarize my main points. And I've done it this way. Anyone who has seen national cheerleading competitions has discovered that the stereotypical image of a snobby popular girl prancing around the field calling out letters is not accurate. Cheerleaders prepare and drill as a team in order to perform exhilarating stunts and routines that win them respect and trophies. So I've summarized everything that I've written actually, and I've touched on those 3 topics if you've seen. Stunts and routines are part of athletic skills, and that's what I talked about in that paragraph. Physical training was all about the preparation that they take, so I have that listed as well. And then in my 3rd paragraph, I talked about team competition, and here I've mentioned that they work in a team and they win trophies. So I've kind of wrapped up everything that I've talked about. Finally, you need to answer the so what. Why does what I have written matter? Why is my topic important? What can I say to convince my readers to care about what I've written? Do I want the reader to think differently than they did when they started reading my paper? Do I want the reader to do something with the information I've given? You need to think of a way to give your reader something to think about after they finish your essay, that it stays on their mind for a little while. You most importantly need to write an ending that just feels satisfying, like it feels like it is the end. When you see movies or an episode in your favorite series, you know when the episode is coming to an end. You can feel it, right? And there's just some ending that's kind of satisfying in a way. That's what you're looking for. I wrapped up my conclusion by saying, since we are a society that honors the incredible dedication and discipline of our athletes, it is time we let cheerleaders inspire us in that same way. So it's kind of like my so what. All my reason about analyzing cheerleading and discovering that it is a sport comes down to this. Let's consider it a sport. Let's honor it just like we honor all other athletes. That was the point. That's the so what of my paper. So here is my concluding paragraph in its entirety. In red is my restated thesis. In blue is my summary. And purple is my so what moment. If you see in bold, I have indicated the two transition words that I've used in this paragraph. So let's read it all together. Extreme feats of athletic ability, intense training, and a healthy dose of competition are the key ingredients to any serious sport. Thus, we can see that cheerleading clearly qualifies. Anyone who has seen national cheerleading competitions has discovered that the stereotypical image of a snobby, popular girl prancing around the field, calling out letters, is not accurate. Cheerleaders prepare and drill as a team in order to perform exhilarating stunts and routines that win them respect and trophies. Since we are a society that honors the incredible dedication and discipline of our athletes, it is time we let cheerleaders inspire us in that same way. I just followed that simple 1, 2, 3. Some things to watch out for. I've told you throughout this some common things that people use that are kind of overplayed. If you don't end your conclusion, don't start your conclusion with in conclusion, in summary, in closing. Those are very played out. They're very cliche. You want to stay away from those. Do not introduce any new information. Your conclusion is all about reminding the reader what they already know from reading your paper. Do not give them anything new. And you do not need to, just like in the introduction, it is not time to include evidence or lots of details. That is what the body paragraphs are for. So keep it short, keep it sweet, between 5 to 7 sentences. I wonder how many I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I only have 4 sentences. My sentences are long, they're complex, but they're only 4. So between 5 to 7 is a good number to try for. So to conclude, just to wrap up, remember you restate your thesis, you summarize your main points in just a few, like 2 sentences, and then you answer so what. You give us some kind of lasting impression or sense of closure. Your next step, before completing your concluding paragraph, go back. Read your introduction and your first 3 body paragraphs. This is going to help you remember everything you covered and write a better concluding paragraph that will wrap things up nicely. So follow these 3 steps in the slide. Rewatch the video if you need to. You can find today's assignment on Google Classroom. 605 conclusion. Now, after this lesson, we only have 1 more lesson, and then the paper is due. We have some days in between, but in an actual lesson, we only have 1 more on self-editing. So it is coming to an end. I cannot wait to read what you guys will come up with. Good luck.